sit down. Okay, Yedidia, please take it away.
Hi, everybody. Please sit down. Okay, in this session, we are going to deal with the question of the future of the Jewish state, and we are going to conduct a conversation with two serious but interesting, usually it doesn't go together, this time serious and interesting public intellectuals, I would say. Professor Israel Aumann, Robert Aumann, mathematician from the Hebrew University. If you don't know, he received the Nobel Prize 18 years ago? Yes, 18. He's a mathematician. He wouldn't know, obviously. It was 18 years ago. And on his work on conflict and cooperation through game theory analysis. And the second, Dr. Goodman, really one of the major prolific, I would say, writers and speakers in Israeli society. We all owe you a lot, Micha. Thank you, both of you, for coming and joining us. As a starting point for the discussion, and I hope it will be discussion and not just lectures, guys, okay? I would like to frame the discussion along the following lines. And all of us, we know the terms of Rabbi Soloveitchik, Brit Yehud and Brit Goral, on covenant of destiny and covenant of fate. The way I look at us, Israel and Israelis, we are probably not sharing the covenant of destiny. We have different views on the destiny of the state of Israel, of the purpose, the vision, where we should head. We do not agree. But at least till last year, despite the fact that we did not share the vision, we shared the fate. We acted as one. We had our, obviously, disagreements, but we knew that we have to act as one. And that's why Israel is such an amazing success on all fronts. On all fronts. Unbelievable. I remember myself as a kid, born here as opposed to the two. Are you Israeli born? No.
Born and raised.
Really? Okay, as opposed to you. As a kid in the 60s, if somebody would come to me in the 60s and tell me that Israel today will look the way it looks, I would never believe. Nobody would believe. Amazing success. Despite the fact that we did not agree ever on the vision of the state. And my interpretation on the vision of the state, of the vision, yeah.
Not division, but vision.
Exactly.
There is division.
There is division, right, about the vision. Okay, nowadays, this year, 2023, תשפ"ג, שלא זיזכר לטובה, I feel that our disputes over the destiny is shaking up our agreement about the fate. I think that what we're seeing right now is cracks in the agreement about how we can function together. As a beginning for this discussion, I would like to hear, first of all, each one of yours, your vision. Then we'll talk about the fate. But let's start with the vision. Professor Aumann, the younger one, please start.
Okay, well, I think the vision is what we are. Yes, we're a Jewish state. Yes, in other words, Shabbat is the day of rest, and every country there's a day of rest, and in our place it's Shabbat, and most boys are circumcised, have a brit, and the streets are named after people in Jewish history, and the places are named after people in Jewish history, and people usually get married. Most people, when they get married with the Rabbanut, and I think the fact of the matter is that we are a Jewish state. We're not, many of us are not Shomrei Mitzvot, but we're Jews, okay? And I think we'll continue to be Jews. I think...
So the character of the public sphere, is making us Jewish.
The public sphere, yeah. Also, to a large extent, also the private sphere, yes. Being circumcised is not only public.
But you circumcise in Brooklyn as well, You circumcise in Brooklyn as well. Is that a part of it?
I think we are largely... I think there is a problem with a minority of people who are not Jewish, yes, and somehow they should be integrated into the Jewish people, maybe through conversion, maybe by other means, yes, but I'm not talking about the Arab minority. I'm talking about 5% of the population of Israel are in fact not Jewish at all, yes. They should become part of the Jewish people, yes. In the book of Esther is written, "V'rabim amei haaretz mit Yehudim." Many people became Jewish, yes, after the plot of Haman failed. Many people became Jewish. I think I don't know what exactly happened to them when they became Jewish, but in the same sense, people should. The minority, but I think on the whole, I don't think that's going to change with the cracks that you're mentioning. The cracks are important, but I don't think that's going to change. I mean, even people on the if you're opposed to the reform, yes. That a lot of religious people are opposed to the reform. If you're opposed to the reform, that doesn't mean that you'll get married in a Catholic church. Yeah. I think it's okay. Yes, it's okay.
Okay, Micha.
So first of all, thank you for your ככה? שומעים? If I understand Professor Aumann's description of Israel, Israel is a Jewish state in the sense that it's populated mainly by Jews, and there is a public space that somehow represents that. And I think you're saying, we have it, that's enough. From now on, Zionism is about preserving what we've achieved. Right? So, my understanding of your answer is, I think Theodor Herzl wrote not one, but two important books regarding Zionism. The first one, 1896, Medinat HaYehudim, Judenstaat, I think is about the state of the Jews. And then a second book he wrote called Alt Neuland in 1902. Those are two different visions for Zionism. In his 1896, Medinat HaYehudim, in the heart of the book is the problem of the persecution of Jews, of anti-Semitism. And this is the narrative we all know of Theodor Herzl. Zionism is a response to anti-Semitism. Roughly speaking, this is how Jabotinsky understood Herzl. The world is a hostile place for Jews. It's a dangerous place for Jews. We need a state where we can escape we can escape a hostile world and be protected from a hostile world. So there is a problem, anti-Semitism, there is a solution, Zionism. That's Herzl version 1896. In 1902, Zionism is there to solve a different problem. Humanity has problems. Humanity, according to Alt Neuland, have serious problems of matching politics and technology. I won't go into the problems he addresses in Alt Neuland, but the problems are problems of humanity. And what's the solution to the problems of humanity? Zionism. Jews immigrating to Eretz Israel, creating an experiment in technology and politics, and creating the know-how that could heal the world. That is a very different vision for Zionism. It's not a Zionism that says we need a state in order to escape the world and protect ourselves from humanity. We need a state in order to inspire the world. and help heal humanity. And if I understand your question, I think the first 75 years, we were in the Zionism of Judenstadt, of Medinat Yehudim, of preserving the Jewish people. And I think that's how I understand also what Professor Aumann is saying, preserving the status quo. We've achieved it, now we have to preserve it. That's the Zionism, I think, of Medinat Yehudim. But what would it look like if we start envisioning the Zionism of Alt-Neuland, where we don't ask only how do we protect Jews and somehow escape a hostile world, but what do we have to offer to that world? What could heal that world? And it sounds like a very, very naive question, but I just want to articulate the question itself and put it on the table. I think the way I understand Medinat Yehudim is 1896 work of Herzl, is the following. Herzl understood that anti-Semitism is a serious problem. He can't find a great solution that heals anti-Semitism. And then he starts thinking about a new universal ideology called liberal nationalism. Liberal nationalism is the idea that just like if classic liberalism is that all individuals have equal rights, liberal nationalism is that all nations have equal rights, especially the right for self-determination. And this is a universal idea that the world, liberal nationalists like to believe, like Jabotinsky and like Herzl, like to believe that the world is a family, it's a mishpacha, it's a family of what? Of nations. And if the Jews want to be a part of humanity, want to be a part of the family of nations, it has to be organized as a nation. So be accepted into humanity once it'll be organized as a nation. This is how I think what Herzl did. He found a universal solution to a Jewish problem. There's a Jewish problem, anti-Semitism. There's a universal solution, liberal nationalism. And he married a universal solution to a Jewish problem. Maybe, I just want to put, maybe the next 75 years, if they're not only about escaping the world, but also somehow healing the world, inspiring the world, which was always an instinct within the Zionist movement in different versions, by the founding fathers of this country. Maybe it's to turn the question upside down. Maybe now we don't have to find universal solutions to Jewish problems, but Jewish solutions to universal problems. The world is suffering from two great problems. One is global warming, climate change. It's a serious threat on the future of humanity, or on the future of our ability to have modern civilization on planet Earth. But also has a second problem, which I think is a greater problem, political polarization. Political polarization. These great divides we're experiencing in Israel now, Yedidia, are very Israeli, but they're not unique to Israel. The world is suffering from high levels of polarization, which are neutralizing the ability of both sides of the aisle to cooperate, to do great things together. And as a result, nation states are weaker, they're frozen now. Israel, asking what's wrong with Israel is like asking what's wrong with the summer of Tel Aviv. It's the wrong question. It's not that Tel Aviv the summer of Tel Aviv went wrong. There's global warming. We don't ask what's the problem with Tel Aviv, what's the problem with the world. Polarization is also a global phenomenon today. And here's a question. I just want to leave it a question. I don't know if there's Jewish solutions to the universal problem of climate change, but I do think that Jewish wisdom can help us deal with the second problem, maybe even a greater problem, political polarization. The tradition that developed the art of arguing, the art that breaks binary thinking, not prophetic thinking. I know the daughter of Heschel is here, but I think now it's not the time for the prophets, but for the rabbis. Not for binary thinking, but for Talmudic thinking. And in that sense, and with this I'll end, here's I think one of the greatest challenges for Israel in the next 75 years. How do we move from Judenstadt to Alt-Neuland? Without giving up on Judenstadt. I think Professor Aumann is right. This is a tremendous achievement, having a state with Jews. And we have to preserve it and fight for it and keep it alive. And what you were discussing, Yedidia, of the Brit Goral cracking, not only the Brit Yehud, I don't think it's serious. I think we're having a fight, and when people have fights, so after the fight, you regret things you said and things you did. I think it's just the heat of the moment. I don't think that our Brit Goral is collapsing. I might be wrong. But when we talk about our Brit Yehud, about the vision for Israel, I think it's time to move from to keep Judenstaat alive, to move to Artland, to ask not only how do we protect ourselves from the world, but what do you have to offer the world, to reverse Herzl's question, not only to find universal solutions to Jewish problems, but let's start discussing how do we find Jewish solutions to universal problems.
I feel that we had two answers. People are polite here, but you cannot think of more different answers to the same question. Just the opposite. Professor, and that's my job here to make it alive. So Professor Aumann says, well, first of all, we are ready, and we have to maintain. Let's keep Shabbat special. Let's keep our practice as Jews, and we are a majority, and this is a fulfillment of a vision. Comes the younger guy, says, are you kidding me? We have to change the world. So what can be more conflicting between the two of you? I would like each one of you to reflect on the others. Professor Aumann, you hear here a cry for changing the world using, excuse me.
I'm very conservative by it. I don't.
Okay, using the Jewish tradition and the fact that we have a state. We have a platform to do it, not just as individuals.
I don't see how that's going to happen. I think we are changing the world in some ways, yes. I mean, we are very good at certain things, yes, at high tech and so on, yes, but...
Game theory, for example.
Okay, game theory, okay. Yeah, we're good at certain things, so Jews and altogether have been very good at intellectual endeavors, okay? And I think that's part of the Jewish tradition, because we say every morning, Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. Torah study is equivalent to the whole of the Jewish sphere, yes. Torah study, yeah, it really is. And Jews have taken Torah study and some of them have erased the Torah and made it into just study, but that's okay also, okay. But I don't see that that's happening, okay? That Jews, as Jews, are changing the world. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Take the. I don't see it. I don't see it happening. In other words, Jews are changing the world, yes, but not as Jews. Oh, you know, the movie Oppenheimer,
yeah.
Yes? They're all Jews. They're all Jews. The only non-Jew is Harry Truman. Everybody's Jewish in the picture. So fine, okay, but they didn't act as Jews, okay? They didn't act as Jews. So maybe Jews are changing the world, but not sort of as, not a Yehud. All right.
I want to challenge Micha. I'm also optimistic by nature, and I tend to see the reality of today as reality of today, not necessarily the reality of the future. I tend to agree with you. Nevertheless, we cannot ignore what's going on, and we have to face it, not just to talk about changing the world, but about fixing us. And when I talk about the visions for the State of Israel, I would like to bring you back here to Jerusalem today. What is your take about the vision for Israel, how to deal with what we are experiencing right now? How can you make your optimistic view reality and make sure it will happen?
So first of all, right now, Professor Aumann is right. We're not changing the world. Now, by the way, the shift of Zionism is in diaspora. In 1,900 years of Galut, Jews had a tremendous impact on the world. Oppenheimer. But Judaism didn't influence the world. When we were speaking Hebrew and being sovereign here, hundreds of years beforehand, we created the Tanakh, that the ideas in the Tanakh about God, about humanity, about time, about Shabbat, those ideas changed the world. The shift in Jewish history in biblical times, Jewish ideas changed the world. Later on, Jewish individuals changed the world. I think Altneuland, I think that shift in Zionism is about going back to Judaism having influence on the world, not just individual Jews. But the problem is, and thank you for bringing us back to the reality of Jerusalem 2023. Right now, what's really happening is that we are not changing the world is changing us. We're living in a poisonous, polarized world, and the polarization of the world and the poison of the world is entering Israel and dividing Israel. Like Brazil is polarized, Argentina is polarized, the Americans are so polarized, the Spanish are polarized. Now we're just am kechol ha'amim. By the way, I also think we might be more polarized than them because we also have polarized cultural genes within us. So now polarization is not a global problem we have to find a Jewish solution to, but it's an Israeli problem we have to find Israeli answers to. I think the two characteristics of Israeli polarization is the following. We hate each other today probably more, I don't want to say more than ever because we had peaks in the 50s, the 90s, but I think we're at least reaching our own peaks. And polarization is a very specific brand of hate. Racism is when you hate someone because of the color of their skin. Misogyny is you hate someone because of her gender. Polarization is when you hate someone because he's a leftist, or because she's a Trump supporter, or because they're Bibi supporters. Polarization gives rise to a very specific brand of hate. Hating people because of their politics. That brand of hate is on the rise all over the world. Robert Putnam from Harvard argues that today America is more polarized than it was ever since the 1860s. That's the United States of America. That doesn't mean America is entering civil war, but it does mean our American friends are in deep seems like they're in trouble. And Israel is a part of the world, also Israel polarized, and that brand of hate is on the rise. But there's a different way to think about polarization. Not as the rise of hate, but the destruction of the ability of both sides to find agreement. That's not emotional polarization, ideological polarization, where the disagreement grows. And here's the paradox of Israeli politics today. In 2023, or in the past, we're ending a few decades where ideologically, moderate right-wingers, moderate left-wingers are more closer today than they ever were before in the past. I stand behind this on almost every issue. Moderate right-wingers, moderate left-wingers, and centrists, like Benny Gantz that was here before, are closer ideologically on issues and on policies than they ever were before. And at the same time, they hate each other probably more than ever before. Noam Gidron from Hebrew U just came out with a research showing that ever since in Israel we don't have research showing polarization back to the 1860s. I don't know how Putnam came up with that, but we do have from the 80s, and we're more polarized emotionally. So here's a paradox of Israeli polarization. We hate each other more than the past, while we agree with each other more than the past. So here's the big question. What's going to guide us? Our intellectually we agree, while emotionally we hate. What's going to guide us? And I think, and the reason why I'm optimistic in the long term about Israel, is that in Israel we have a pretty large majority of between 60 to 70% of Israelis that share values, that agree with the hybrid formula of the state of Israel, a Jewish democracy. And when this 60% says Jewish, they don't mean a state that contains Jews. They mean Jewish in the thick sense of the world, that includes ideas, sacred texts, cultural habits. And when we say democratic, we don't just mean democratic in the procedural sense, in the procedural sense of the term. Democracy comes with a set of values of diversity, individualism, human rights, liberalism. Now, how do we balance Judaism and democracy? I don't know. Those are the arguments, but it's an interesting argument. It's not people on the radical left that want Israel to be a democratic state that's not Jewish, or in different brands of the right that see Israel as Jewish in nature and identity, and being democratic is just a procedure. Most Israelis buy in to the hybrid equation of Israel. That hybrid equation is not mentioned in Megillat Atzmaut, but I think it's the best interpretation of Megillat Atzmaut. So here's a question, Yedidia, I just want to end your question with a different question or a challenge. How does the Megillat Atzmaut majority govern Israel again? Right now, the Megillat Atzmaut majority, the Israelis that completely buy the hybrid formula of the state of Israel, that's not the majority governing Israel, because that majority is split within itself over artificial ideological battle lines. If we could heal the artificial polarization dividing the Megillat Atzmaut majority in Israel, we'll be able to deal with the real polarization which exists between the broad Israeli center and the extreme right and the extreme left. That's where the real ideological polarization exists, while there's artificial polarization creating not artificial but real hate between around artificial lines, splitting the Megillat Atzmaut majority right in the middle.
What did you say? Real hate?
There's real hate.
Hate? H-A-T-E?
Sin'ah.
Sin'ah?
Yeah.
I don't see any real hate.
I'll tell you why you don't see real hate for good reasons.
What?
For good reasons. My bet is that you're not on social media.
What's that?
Are you on social media?
Do I read so?
No. Are you on Facebook?
No.
Okay, so I think it's a good idea to stay off Facebook, and I think we should all follow the guidelines of Professor Aumann. That's how we don't let the poison or the digital revelation invade our mind.
But even so, real hate, you find it on Facebook, okay, but Facebook doesn't represent most people.
I agree.
Huh?
Okay, my friends, we're running out of time. First of all, regarding Megillat Atzmaut, you know, JPPI asked Mif'al HaPais, I'm saying the name, to give us some donation. Mif'al HaPais, okay? It's not right or left. Am I wrong? No, it's not right or left.
Mamlachti.
We asked them to give us some donation in order to do some project about Megillat Atzmaut, the Declaration of Independence. They were considering seriously, apparently, and eventually, and I'm saying it on record, b'chavana, they said, well, today, this is a disputable document, so we cannot support it. Unbelievable. And I can give you so many stories that showing that to be optimistic, you have to be really, really, really optimistic. It's tough, but I am. And I want to end up, since we're running out of time, by saying my take 2 minutes.
Please.
2 minutes. To me, and I basically agree with you, Micha, that the differences between us are smaller than the way they are being brought to the public in reality. And we have lots of information supporting it, actually. Data. So what's going on? I believe, think about yourself or about your kids in the adolescence area. When you're 17 and 18, and you look at the mirror, and what do you see over there? Love-hate relationship. Who is this person on the mirror? And your feeling towards your parents, your friends, your whatever, your environment is always hostile, and friendship, love, hate. This is Israel today. 75 years old is adolescence for us Jews as a ribonut, as a sovereignty. And we're very young. And we're fighting. Yes, we're fighting. But I agree with Micha that eventually, I don't know when, but eventually we'll come out of this adolescence into maturity. And differences will stay with us. Differences are real. They will stay with us. But we'll be able to contain it and to act together and to rebuild what Soloveitchik called covenant of faith. I want to thank you very much for coming, and I want everybody... Yaakov. Come, guys.
Okay. Thank you very much to Micha and Professor Aumann.